Indian Lake. It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Northern Light for Monday, June 5th. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
The drowning deaths of two migrant families in the St. Lawrence River last spring hit Akwesasne particularly hard.
I know that once moms and grandmothers and young moms here saw the photo of the Romanian family, that was just almost too much to bear.
A conversation with Indian Time newspaper's editor about how the Mohawk community took the news.
Governor Kathy Hochul and New York's counties did not make progress in getting the federal government to help with the state's migrant crisis, but she says she hasn't given up hope.
You get people these expedited work permits. I guarantee the farm's not far from here, and the hotels and the restaurants, they'll have the workforce that they've been begging for. So this is an opportunity.
Also on the show, birders from around the region gathered at the Paul Smith College Vic over the weekend for the annual Great Adirondack Birding Celebration. We'll hear from naturalist and keynote speaker from the event, Ivan Phillipson, about sharing his passion for birds on his podcast. All of that and more is coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by the Village Mercantile, bringing Saranac Lake to places beyond the Adirondacks, offering Adirondack-made and inspired goods. VillageMerc.com, anything but general. And by Apothecary Chocolates, making gourmet chocolates by hand from all natural herbs, botanicals, and tree syrups. ApothecaryChocolates.com.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. In late March, a tragedy struck the community of Akwesasne particularly hard. Two migrant families from India and Romania died in the frigid waters of the St. Lawrence River trying to cross into the United States. Their bodies, including two small children, were found in marshes in Akwesasne Mohawk territory. One Mohawk man, Casey Oakes, believed to have been transporting them by boat, still hasn't been found. The episode returned Akwesasne to the headlines as a place where smuggling happens, a reputation Mohawks have been trying to contextualize for decades. Marjorie Ganyadunga Kidders is the editor for Indian Time newspaper based in Akwesasne. She told David Summerstein the deaths blindsided people.
I think the first reaction was, is this even true? It was so like a traumatic event. How can this be? I know that once moms and grandmothers and young moms here saw the photo of the Romanian family, that was just almost too much to bear, because it's much like hearing about the Kamloops residential school children that had never returned home. Many of them were lost and never heard of again. It's that type of thing that just grabs you. And two young babies drowned. They died in a freezing cold river.
Yeah.
With their parents. And I really believe that it affected everybody here, everyone, not just young moms and grandmothers, and it affected everyone.
In addition to these families, these migrant families, also a man from Akwesasne was missing as well.
Yes, and that again, being such a small community, that affects everyone as well. If you're not related, then you know who they are. And he had many friends. He had a large family, and it was tragic.
And then there's the issue of, smuggling in Akwesasne of people, of tobacco, of whatever. And, having that in the headlines again, how does that affect the community?
It's almost like working on our image 2.0, because we have worked for years on the image of Akwesasne being the cigarette smuggling capital of North America. And then this happens, and it comes back again to what is the image of Akwesasne.
How do you think, this moment sort of will play out, in the sort of overall context of, sort of smuggling things that happen in Akwesasne?
In two different ways. Like, one is that we're more vocal about it now. We stand up and say this is not entirely representative of Akwesasne or its people here, which is what I think many people thought when all of the smuggling of cigarettes was going on, is that everybody in Akwesasne smuggled cigarettes. Everybody was rich because of that, and that was just entirely untrue. And this time people are saying it was such a horrific event that you need to give Akwesasne time to grieve, to process this, and that this is also not reflective of everyone here. Like, Akwesasne is a vibrant, alive community. We are more ready, I think, to tell people who we are. And it's tragic this happened, and it's still going on. I can't be naive to think that they have stopped smuggling people, but it's not reflective of everything that we are here. We have a lot of things going on. We had our Kids for Fishing, which they have, Akwesasne Mohawk Police has been doing for over 13 years now. They have a little draw. They take 40 Akwesasne children out. They go fishing for the day. They receive classes. They receive safety gear. They receive fishing equipment, a lunch, a breakfast, the whole deal. And the entire day is spent fishing, and they love it. The other thing is lacrosse. Everywhere from 5-year-olds up to senior lacrosse. And you can go into an arena and watch 7-year-old kids play, and the arena is full. That's how everybody loves lacrosse in Akwesasne. It's part of our identity.
Marjorie Gunyadunge Skitters is the editor for Indian Time newspaper based in Akwesasne. She spoke with David Summerstein.
Listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 8 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Just ahead, how the pandemic and a love for birding led one man to start his own podcast. We'll hear more on that conversation coming up in just a few minutes here on Northern Light.
Music by Stony Creek guitarist Hank Soto. Check out more of Hank's music, part of our Underscore project, on our website, ncpr.org/underscore. Northern Light is supported by Adirondack Experience, the museum on Blue Mountain Lake, presenting their new exhibition, Artists and Inspiration in the Wild, opening July 1st. Learn more at the adkx.org. And by Seagull Festival in Scroon Lake, bringing opera and musical theater to the Adirondack since 1915. More at seagullfestival.org.
Asylum seekers are still arriving in New York City, and Mayor Eric Adams has been sending some of them to other parts of the state. Governor Kathy Hochul and other state and county leaders have made little progress over the past week in getting help from the federal government. But Hochul says she hasn't given up. From Albany, Karen DeWitt reports.
Governor Hochul has been asking the federal government, including aides to President Joe Biden, a political ally, to help. She says now that the federal debt ceiling crisis has been averted, she plans to renew her efforts.
We're very strongly pursuing the options that we believe are available.
In addition to more money to help house and feed the migrants, Hochul says a top priority is waiving the 180-day waiting period required before an asylum seeker can apply for jobs. The governor, speaking in Syracuse, says there are plenty of agricultural slots open now that some of the migrants could fill.
You get people these expedited work permits. I guarantee you the farm's not far from here, and the hotels and the restaurants, they'll have the workforce that they've been begging for. So this is an opportunity.
So far, though, the governor has not received any answers. Meanwhile, local government leaders say there continues to be confusion over New York City's busing of migrants to upstate locations. Around 72,000 asylum seekers have entered the city in the past year. Around 300 have been sent to other locations. Several Republican-led counties issued orders barring local hotels from accepting the migrants after Adams authorized the busing to hotels in Orange and Rockland counties, which have GOP county executives. Democratic-led Albany County also issued a similar ban, saying they want to make sure that the proper support services are in place before allowing hotels to accept the migrants. Despite that, a few dozen migrants were bused to a hotel in the Albany suburb of Colony, governed by Republicans. Later, another busload arrived at a hotel in Albany, which is a sanctuary city for immigrants. Albany Mayor Kathy Sheehan says she did not have a say on where the migrants were sent, and she says she has concerns about the location. The hotel has been the subject of multiple police calls in recent years. She says she worries that unscrupulous people might try to take advantage of the migrants.
This is a vulnerable population, so I want to ensure that they are not subjected to people coming to try to take advantage.
The New York State Association of Counties Executive Director Steve Aquario says counties are frustrated with the lack of coordination over the busing of the migrants and need the federal government to step up and assist with housing and feeding the asylum seekers and reducing the waiting time until they can legally work. They are also calling on Hochul to take better charge of the situation. The governor says she's holding weekly conference calls with county executives from around the state. She says some are simply asking for more clarity about when and where the migrants might be arriving. But she says she's disappointed in the lack of welcome from others. She says they have created hysteria and a false narrative around the migrants who have all entered the country legally and have undergone criminal background checks in their home countries. She says New York and the nation were built by immigrants, and she wishes that those objecting to the asylum seekers would see it that way.
I asked them to simply ask where their parents and grandparents came from.
In response, Rockland County Executive Ed Day said in a letter that it's unfair to label the county's reactions as bigoted. He says they are simply angry that the mayor of New York is attempting to dictate what happens outside the city's limits in what he says is a home rule state. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
New York's fertility rate has been on a mostly steady decline over the last 2 decades, and it shows no signs of rebounding. According to data from the state's Department of Public Health, almost 211,000 babies were born in New York in 2021, a 13% decline from the decade before. Demographer Leslie Reynolds of Cornell University says more women are making decisions based on balancing work and family.
Choosing to have kids, it's often based on the resources that you have. So if you can't see your family, it'll be a lot harder to have children and know that you'll have to work from home and also take care of your children. So there's a balance of childcare and social support and also economic concerns.
Reynolds says more women are also waiting longer to have children, something not surprising considering the social norms of two parents working.
You may push it to a point in your career where you feel comfortable taking leave or you have benefits, you may not want that right out of college job when you're having your baby. You want something more stable.
New York's fertility rate declined at more than twice the rate of the national average. The report highlighted the persisting racial and ethnic disparities. For example, Black infants were more likely to die compared to other racial or ethnic groups in New York. In a statement, the health commissioner said he's concerned about these disparities despite the overall progress statewide. The department says factors like healthcare coverage, housing, and transportation contribute to the racial disparities and says it's pursuing efforts to reduce those disparities.
Most of the Adirondack Rail Trail is closed during construction this summer. Crews have been working on the section between Lake Placid and Saranac Lake this spring, and work is about to begin on the next section to Santa Clara. The state awarded a nearly $9 million contract to a Troy-based construction company to complete the section from Saranac Lake to Santa Clara. The 34-mile trail is expected to be finished by this fall. Meanwhile, the renovated scenic rail line from Tupper Lake south to Utica starts running in mid-July.
One of the biggest sporting events in Lake Placid last winter could be returning again next year. According to the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, the Olympic Village has applied to host a ski jumping World Cup event. The World Cup this past February drew more than 8,000 people to Lake Placid, particularly Polish ski jumping fans from places like Chicago and Connecticut. The Olympic Regional Development Authority has applied to host the event again next February and is just waiting for final approval. If confirmed, Lake Placid would be the only ski jumping World Cup event in North America next winter.
You are listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. In just a minute, podcasting as a way to share a love for birding. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note, just ahead at 8:42. But first, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
Yeah, the Weather Service says today, highs this afternoon, upper 60s, low 70s with light and variable winds. And what the Weather Service is calling hazy conditions, some hazy sunshine, partly cloudy skies. Lows tonight around 50 with some scattered showers possible. And then tomorrow, about an 80% chance of light showers and isolated storms. Highs in the 60s on Tuesday, lows dipping to near 40 overnight Tuesday night. Then Wednesday, still a chance of some showers, highs in the 50s, low 60s. Looks like highs in the low 60s on Thursday and Friday as well. The extended forecast calls for a high in the low 70s by next Saturday. So a little cooler this week. Today, highs upper 60s, low 70s. Then a chance of scattered showers tonight and tomorrow. Right now in Canton, 53 degrees, partly cloudy skies.
Birders from around the North Country gathered at the Paul Smith's Vic over the weekend for the annual Great Adirondack Birding Celebration. Our Todd Moe caught up with a naturalist and podcaster Ivan Phillipson about his love for birding and sharing that passion with his The Science of Birds podcasts. Phillipson was the keynote speaker at the event on Saturday.
But birds weren't always his primary link to the natural world. Raised in the Pacific Northwest, Phillipson says as a child he was fascinated by reptiles and amphibians. After graduate school, he taught natural history and then started his own outdoors touring company, which morphed into bird outings. But when tourist numbers dropped during the COVID pandemic, Phillipson turned to podcasting as an outlet. He started hosting The Science of Birds just a few years ago, and it now has thousands of listeners around the world. He told me he still leads birding tours around the world, but that his pandemic project, The Science of Birds podcast, led him to an even greater passion for birds.
So I started doing day tours after academia, and they were very much general natural history, not focused on reptiles and amphibians, not focused on birds, but everything. And eventually, the birds just came to the forefront all the time because they were always there no matter what. We might find some frogs, we might find some, mammals, but birds were always there. And so I'd already had some interest, but that just kept reinforcing the idea that, these are just such a great set of organisms to show people, to introduce nature, through the lens of birds and birding. And so I eventually became a birder through that process. And, one thing led to another. I got connected with our local Audubon and so on and so forth. And here I am.
But you've had an interest in birds as well since you were a little kid, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I was pretty laser focused on amphibians and reptiles. I never disliked birds. I was just kind of focused very much on the ground, rather than up in the trees and listening. So that's kind of the irony, is that I only have one tattoo and it's a frog, so I'm like totally into birds. Like that's my number one thing now. But, I had this legacy of reptiles and amphibians, and they'll always have a special place in my heart. I'm always excited to see them. I saw a turtle on the road here the other day, which was great. We don't have that so much in Oregon. But yeah, birds, it's just, there's many, many reasons why I think they're super exciting. And I think as an educator, as a naturalist, I think if you're going to pick one group of organisms that you can speak to many different topics in science and natural history, I think birds are just about the best thing you could choose.
The podcasts are kind of wide-ranging, and I was pleased to hear you even made reference to northern New York with our ice storm and how birds survive in the winter and that kind of thing, which is something people around here are always interested in. Yeah. So it's a mix of science and conversation and a little bit of humor sometimes. And your idea is to not be too stoic, but to make it fun and interesting and inviting, right?
Yeah, Todd, exactly. I decided early on that I wanted it to be very educational. I wanted it to be rich with information, but, lighthearted and accessible to people of all ages. And, I left academia. I don't want to be dry and academic. I want to have this be very fun and accessible. And I think that mixture works. But I actually decided early on to script the podcast, right? It's not me just kind of riffing, in front of a microphone. It takes a long time. I script each one carefully, put the humor in and everything. And then that way I think it has the most sort of, the most impact. It's gets to the point, and if there are digressions, they're intentional digressions.
What's your message today to the birders here at the Paul Smith's Vic? Do you come with a lesson or just imparting some of your experience?
Good question. Yeah, I've done some of these talks, and the early versions of it, I would just someone would ask me to talk about a specific aspect of bird biology, and I would do that, and that was fun. But this presentation does have, I hope, a larger message, and that is that kind of what I was saying, which I think birds are this amazing lens to look at the universe through, to understand not just the birds themselves, but the greater ecosystems around them, the other organisms, rippling all the way out to the cosmos, essentially, and ourselves, and understanding ourselves. And it's a kind of a grand idea, but it's something that I've come to through doing this. It wasn't something I set out to do with the podcast, but because of this feedback I get, realizing the effect this simple little podcast has on people. Some people are like, I hate to say it, but they're like, this has changed my life, or I wasn't interested in birds before. Now I get it. This is opening my eyes to things. That's a more common theme.
Favorite spot for birding, because you've been all over the world, to Iceland, to the jungles in South America. Has there been a favorite spot, a favorite experience?
A couple things that come to mind, fairly recent experiences where I literally in the moment felt like this is some of the best birding I've ever had. One was in Hawaii. We were doing a tour in Hawaii, and we were up on the side of the mountain there on the Big Island, and we were in, one of these last vestiges of the natural habitat, and there were just all these Hawaiian endemic forest birds around, and it was a beautiful day, and it was just like this amazing thing, for so many reasons. And then the other one that came to mind was I was recently in Patagonia scouting for a future tour, and I was down there, in Tierra del Fuego, and there was the Magellanic woodpecker, which I remember seeing, David Attenborough talking about many years ago on one of his documentaries, and they were all around us, and they were just right there, and it was just like, this is too cool, too cool to be here in this, just the edge of the world, practically, right, having these kind of experiences. So not that that's super accessible to a lot of people, but Here in the States, I would say Southeast Arizona. I have kind of a long history of working there. Actually, some of my research that had to do with aquatic insects, nothing to do with birds. I was down there and spent some time, but as many people here would know, it's a fantastic place to go birding.
Favorite bird? Favorite bird?
Yeah, sure. Another tough one. I just recently started a list, right? Because I get asked this question, and then I freeze like a deer in the headlights. So I started a list. I will say the one that is typically at the top is the green jay, which is, a bird that you can go to the Rio Grande Valley in southern Texas to see. Otherwise, you need to be in Mexico or elsewhere in Latin America. A corvid, this just gorgeous lime green, blue, black, amazing bird. Of course, cheeky personality like corvids have, So I'm a sucker for colorful birds. I love green. I love jays. So there you go.
Well, maybe, Ivan, a trip around the northern New York, you may find a loon or, there's a few interesting species around here too. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, you guys live in a wonderful place for birds. Loons, I did a whole episode on the common loon, and that is a fantastic bird. So I do hope to see some.
Good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Ivan Phillipson is the host of the podcast, The Science of Birds. He spoke Saturday afternoon at the Great Adirondack Birding Celebration at the Paul Smith's Vic. And you'll find a link to his podcast, The Science of Birds, on our website at ncpr.org. Check it out, The Science of Birds. There's a link on our website, ncpr.org. There's a trip to the aviary with the Carnival of the Animals by Camille Saint-Saëns. A little music to set the mood for birding. And again, check out Ivan Phillipson's podcast at ncpr.org.
You're listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. It's about 8:28. I'm Monica Sandreski here with Todd Moe, and we want to let you know about a few events going on throughout the region, including a station event coming up this Friday. Join us in Potsdam for the first live Beat Authority broadcast of the summer. Host David Summerstein will be spinning great dance tunes at McDuff's Pubs, that's downtown on Market Street, on Friday from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. There will be T-shirt giveaways, NCPR staff to meet, and you can do a shout out live on the radio. And it is also the kickoff for Potsdam's first ever Pride Festival. Bring the rainbows, bring the good vibes to a live broadcast of the Beat Authority this Friday afternoon from 3 to 5 at McDuff's in Potsdam. And then you can stick around throughout the weekend for the Potsdam Pride Festival, including 2 different drag shows, Friday night and Saturday during the day. And so many family-friendly events and an all-ages prom Saturday night. You can find out more at ncpr.org/calendar.
Also, coming up on Saturday, June 10th from 3 to 5 at Heritage Park in Canton, you're invited to the Whimsy Walk. It's a kickoff of 2 months of nature-related whimsies visiting Heritage Park. On Saturday from 3 to 5, it's an afternoon of whimsy. NCPR music host Sarah Scafidi McGuire will have music. There'll be a macroinvertebrate search with Nature Up North and whimsy visitors by Deep Root Center, North Country School, and St. Lawrence University students. That's Saturday, June 10th, 3 to 5, Heritage Park in Canton.
Sounds like a good time. I know,
Whimsies,
so much
yeah.
whimsy. Yes, if it's Northern Light, there must be whimsy. I love it. I love it. Well, that's it for the show for the day. Morning Edition continues in just a minute. Until tomorrow, I'm Monica Sandreski.
I'm Todd Moe. Be well.